feeling like I'm Akademiks. Can't ride no.
Is there any reason you were unable to provide?
So yes, him and his wife did a deposition. I believe he went first, then his wife went after.
Truthful testimony in today's interview?
No.
I don't believe so.
Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton face off against a congressional committee in separate depositions on the Epstein saga. And we have some of the most fiery moments all caught on tape. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. By the way, if you're putting things out on social media, if you're into content creation, you might investigation. This was conducted by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. They were conducted in Chappaqua, New York, where the Clintons live. Let me just tell you, this doesn't really happen that often. When Congress subpoenas you, you go to Congress, not the other way around. But this is a very unusual case, as you know. Such a rare kind of case. But also, seeing these depositions so quickly, having them released so quickly, also unusual. But again, this is a case, this is a story, this is an investigation about transparency. And remember why they are being questioned, okay? Aside from both of their names appearing multiple times in the Epstein Files, right, the files that were released pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act, as far as we can tell, by the way, there are no direct emails from either Bill or Hillary Clinton to Jeffrey Epstein or vice versa. But we already knew they were in his orbit. We already knew about this. Through other evidence like communications and travel records, we knew that the Clintons were connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. More specifically, that Clinton had traveled with Epstein for purposes of humanitarian work with the Clinton Foundation in the early 2000s after Bill Clinton left the office of presidency. And remember, this is before Jeffrey Epstein was charged in 2006 in Florida and ultimately pled guilty in 2008 to the state charges of solicitation of prostitution, including with a minor. Now, the reports indicate that Clinton had traveled on Epstein's private jet at least 24 times. This is per reporting by outlets like the BBC. And by the way, a lot of this travel was actually set up through Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted sex trafficker, and Clinton's top aide, Doug Band. And to be clear, there is no evidence, nothing in the files, nothing that's been released that suggests the Clintons were aware of any illegal activities or were a part of any illegal activities on the part of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell or had knowledge of Epstein's
Oh my
crimes.
God, how much like
clear.
disclaimers?
And by the way, there was no evidence even that Bill or Hillary had visited Epstein's island. Now, having said that, a lot of this focus is on Bill Clinton rather than Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, remember, aside from the humanitarian work, you remember when photos were released? Him in a hot tub, him getting a massage or back rub. So with that being said, the committee released the videotape depositions of both Bill and Hillary Clinton from last week. It's hours and hours worth of footage. We dissected to some of the more memorable parts of both of their testimonies on separate days, okay? Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I believe, okay, there is one thing to read about testimony. There's one thing to read the transcript of testimony. There is an entirely different experience actually seeing the testimony, the way somebody answers a question, the way they even respond, facial tics, body language.
True.
I think it's very, very important. Juries consider it all the time. I'm not saying there's a jury here, but we're kind of like the jury, right? We're analyzing every aspect.
Respectfully, let's get to the shit.
Run by elected officials with a declaration on
every aspect of this investigation. So to see the Clintons respond to these questions, I think adds element of value here, okay? Now, again, the House Committee released both videos. Let's start with Hillary Clinton. This is her opening statement for the committee. And this is where she talks about a lack of transparency.
Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. A committee run by elected officials with a commitment to transparency would ensure the full release of all the files. It would ensure that the lawful redactions of those files protected the victims and survivors, not powerful men and political allies. It would get to the bottom of reports that DOJ withheld FBI interviews in which a survivor accuses President Trump of crimes. It would subpoena anyone who asked on which night there would be the wildest party on Epstein's island. It would demand testimony from...
Wait, did she basically have like an opening statement? Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with depositions. Clearly, I went through one. I sat there with Rock Nation and Meg Thee Stallion lawyers grilling me for 7 hours. Usually, if you're with an attorney or without an attorney, obviously she is with an attorney. Her husband will be too. They're going to say, hey, listen, you know, and we're going to get to Lex Wexner stuff in a little bit. They're going to say as little as you can. The more you say is going to be put on a record of you making a statement on the record under oath. It could always be brought up. That's the thing about depositions, right? You could always bring up what someone said in a deposition because it's a under oath testimony, even if they're not on the stand. So your lawyer is usually trying to make sure you're getting out of there, you're getting off, you know, getting out of being under oath. Because if you say, I don't know, I've never had a cup of ice and Red Bull in my hands at the same time, right? If you say that in this deposition and later on, you know, it comes up that you did, you know, they could try to perjure you in further proceedings or try to go back to that proceeding. Like, you know, I'm being stupid with that type of thing, but your lawyer doesn't want you under oath. Never. That's one thing. Any good lawyer does not want you under oath.
Prosecutors from Florida, New York, and the Department of Justice about why they...
Somebody said she's an attorney, so she knows what not to say. Well, even attorneys get attorneys. So remember that. Because when you're the person being questioned, the human element, when you think you have never done anything wrong, you want to over-explain, you want to give context, you don't feel like you're doing anything. You're not going to be as robotic as someone who doesn't have any type of emotional interest in it, that they might just be like, hey, stop, you know? Also, in depositions, your lawyer can't necessarily interrupt you while you're answering questions. They could talk to you in between questions. And we're going to see that with Lex Wexner. There is no objections from your lawyer. It could be objected, but because there is no judge in that proceeding, it's only noted, and essentially the person who's asking the questions, which is usually in the opposing counsel, or in this case is going to be the committee, they could ask anything, right? This is why the majority of people, you know, I spoke to somebody really powerful, you know, in the legal world, and they explained to me why Rock Nation's CEO Desiree Perez, she avoids every, there was a particular thing that, you know, if it had went to trial, she had to supposedly either possibly testify or get deposed, and she avoided it. Why? They could ask you anything. They could be like, hey, have you cheated on your on your husband before? Have you done this? Have you snitched on a cartel? They could kind of ask anything. Now, granted, your answer's got to be truthful, but you can't be like, hey, I'm not answering that question. Because once you're under subpoena, you kind of are at the mercy. They could, you know, your lawyer could raise an objection saying, hey, listen, this is not relevant. But it doesn't stop the question from being asked. So depositions are really intense, but really sometimes damaging for people of importance, because it's a fact-finding process, and they kind of could ask anything. There's no judge to oversee it.
Gave Epstein...
That's why they were able to ask me a bunch of questions about Drake, right?
A sweetheart deal and chose not to pursue others who may have been implicated in his crimes. But that's not happening. Instead, you have compelled me to testify, fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation, in order to distract from President Trump's actions and to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein Files. If the majority was serious, it would not waste time on fishing expeditions. There is too much to be done. This institutional failure is designed to protect one political party and one public official, rather than to seek truth and justice for the victims and survivors, as well as inform the public who want to get to the bottom of this matter. My heart breaks for the survivors, and I am furious on their behalf.
Now, I mean, it seems that the argument is she's referring to those in the Trump administration, right? People who appear in the Epstein files that are not being properly investigated in her view, like Howard Lutnik, former neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein, United States Commerce Secretary. And by the way, he's a bit controversial because there were communications that would suggest he really didn't cut off contact.
That bot thing for the 5 gifted
with Jeffrey Epstein, but also really focusing on President Donald Trump, right, who appears multiple times in the files, has faced uncorroborated allegations of abuse within the files, which, by the way, we've talked about in prior sidebars. But I gotta call out this moment. Okay, so this is where Hillary Clinton finds out that someone took a photo of her during this deposition. Remember, it was reported that it was Representative Lauren Boebert, okay, Republican, who shared a picture of her with a conservative commentator it was posted all online. It's a big no-no because the rules require no unauthorized video or photos of a closed-door deposition. Watch Hillary Clinton erupt.
You're showing me an email from someone who I don't recall knowing about a fundraiser that wasn't for me but was for Congresswoman Lowy. I have no information. Okay. I went to the fundraiser to support my friend Nia Lowy.
All right.
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
I have
There
another.
are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing? If there are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying, can you please explain how that
I'm
can
done
occur?
with this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's
So I would like
sake.
to understand how that's permissible.
So her lawyer kind of brings it up on the record. Hey, listen, what they're doing is people are taking secret pictures to kind of like and sending it to their media friends to like kind of like, oh, we got her. She's answering questions about this thing. And I don't think there's a judge in this proceeding at all, even though sometimes you could bring stuff to a judge's attention that they can make a ruling in the moment. But it looks like whoever the chairman or whoever the speaker in this committee, they're dealing with these issues.
It doesn't matter. We all are abiding by the same rules.
I will take that down.
Yeah,
So
well,
I would like to take a break at this moment.
yeah,
and I'd like to have
I'm
a
done
conversation.
for now.
Go off the record. Go off the record.
Eventually, the testimony resumed. But now I want to move on to something else, okay? I think we all knew this was probably going to come up. Monica Lewinsky, the president's former affair, right? I mean, there's a lot that came up over this when you knew the Clintons were going to testify, and after they testified, the argument.
And that's the problem about like depositions, right? Like they have a broad scope of being able to ask you about anything, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with exactly what they're investigating. So like Monica Lewinsky got nothing to do with this Epstein stuff. That's just Bill getting his dick sucked by some chick, but they could still ask questions to not only Bill about it, but also his wife, Hillary.
Came up that people say this is another example of Hillary Clinton addressing her husband's actions, this time with respect to Epstein. But there is an apparent connection that Republican Representative Nancy Mace is trying to make here between the two. And by the way, Nancy Mace has been quite vocal about the handling of the Epstein files and the need for further action. But take a look at this.
On December 19th, 1998, President Clinton was impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice, which directly related to his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, correct?
I didn't understand what you said.
Your husband was impeached.
Yo, they're really asking her this question. Remember I told y'all that Hillary held it down? They're asking her this question because a weak ass bitch is gonna be like, you know how she gotta get over her husband embarrassing her in front of the world. It's the first ever president that gets like called out for getting head from like some person that's not their wife in the Oval Office. And she, like, you know, there's egg on her face because everybody's looking at her like, whoa, well, what was she not doing right? Maybe she don't suck dick good enough. Oh, shit, maybe he wanted a prettier girl. So they're bringing this up to kind of see her genuine demeanor because, like, that shit is, like, already done and gone. Like, everybody know all the details with that. Shit, they impeached the nigga over it. But in a deposition, you could bring it up. And if she ever really, like, still never got over it, you're going to see it on her face, or she might say it in an answer. So that's really all they're bringing it up. They're fucking with her.
For perjury related to sexual behavior, his sexual behavior.
He was impeached for several reasons, and then was acquitted in the Senate.
And your husband flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 17 to 26 times, correct?
He made several trips with different legs on the trip, as I recall.
But he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane
Yes, he
17 to
did.
26 times?
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware that Secret Service was dropped on some of those flights?
That is not my understanding.
Where they were not on some of those flights?
That is not my
So
understanding.
your understanding is that Secret Service was on all of the flights that President Clinton was on?
That is
with
my
Epstein?
understanding.
By this standard of behavior, multiple credible accusers, including Juanita Broderick, who alleged rape against your husband was disbarred in Arkansas, lost his law license before the Supreme Court, flew on Epstein's plane dozens of times, visited Epstein's island.
That is not true. That is absolutely untrue.
Well, there's documentation in the DOJ files. I'm not sure you're aware, your attorneys have told you, but Jeffrey Epstein told one of the victims to lie to investigators, to lie that Bill Clinton was ever on Epstein Island. I can provide that document to you.
We would like that document, please.
Okay.
Yeah, counsel,
I can do
because
that.
actually the files say just the opposite. Epstein himself denied he was.
These are FBI notes from an interview with a victim. And
They're trying to trigger her by basically saying, yo, you know, your husband was a dirty dick, a dirty dick bandit that was fucking every and anybody. What do you have to say about him doing A, B, and C? And they're trying to get that reaction out of her where she could possibly be like, yeah, Bill ain't shit, but she's holding it down. You got to realize, hey, listen, and I wasn't trying to like dick ride white women as opposed to any other women. I got to salute the women who, you know, I personally believe there's no perfect relationship, but the women who fucking sit there and they deal with whatever issues they have with their guy, because we know the nature of men, and they keep it within the house and they never ever show people that they're going through some shit or they might feel some shit. Those are the fucking heroes, whether it's Savannah James, whether it's Hillary, and even I'm gonna be honest with you, even Beyonce to a certain extent. You know, obviously she did do an album, but she could have definitely just embarrassed the fuck out of Jay, and she kind of held it down, right?
I can get you the victim number and the case number and the files. These are notes from a 302 interview.
If you'd like those, are you going to provide those now?
I don't. That's not my line of questioning. She brought it up, but I have a
I'm
document. I
sorry,
can give to
you're
you.
making a representation
Yeah.
as to the facts.
I didn't enter anything as an exhibit.
But it's factually inaccurate.
No, I can give it to you later. I can go find the document, make copies of it, and give it to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. By your standard of pattern of behavior, according to documents released by the Department of Justice, your husband appears in photos in swimming pools, hot tubs, aboard Jeffrey Epstein's private plane.
Yo, they're trying to trigger her. Yo, your husband was fucking a lot of bitches, man. What do you think?
With unidentified young women. We came here today and told this committee that a pattern of behavior demands accountability, correct?
I said that I believe the committee should call anyone who had a substantial pattern and practice of contact with Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes before they came to light.
Does that include your husband?
And after they came to light. You're going to have a chance to question him tomorrow.
So I'll ask you again, by the standard you just set in your own words just now, does this standard apply equally to your husband or only President Trump?
I have said that my husband has been subpoenaed. He will appear. He will answer your questions to the best of his ability. But there is no evidence whatsoever of any connection with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And I think that will be obviously apparent in the questioning.
What makes you so sure of that then? I mean, he's photographed with.
Objection,
No,
answer to speculation.
Look, they're trying to say, yo, you know Bill Clinton was a whore. Yo, Hillary is not gonna flip. Yo, Hillary's not one of these Instagram bitches. She's not flipping on her man, bro. Period. I like that.
On something that's not
Yeah, it is so speculative. I mean, swimming in a pool, sitting in.
Yo, she's picking up for him. So what? He's swimming in a pool with a bunch of like bitches. Who cares? Like, she's picking up for her nigga. I like it.
Crimes, and I think that will be obviously apparent in the questioning.
What makes you so sure of that then? I mean, he's photographed with.
Objection, answer to speculate on something that's not evidence.
It is so speculative. I mean, swimming in a pool, sitting in a hot tub, there are millions of people who do that without any improper behavior or certainly committing any crimes. So
Do you think most of the men are like your husband that did anything wrong? Why were they being surrounded by young women, giving them massages on Jeffrey's?
They're trying to trigger her. So, and by the way, we're gonna get to the person asking the question. Her name is Nancy Mace, and she's the one who said she want to talk to Jay-Z too. So she's inquisitive. She just want to know. I like her too, but I like Hillary for never folding. Yo, it's that shoddy method, man. We don't bend, we don't fold. It's fucking Treyway, nigga. You know what I mean? It's the fucking Clintons. They're not folding.
Private estate or private plane, are they all innocent then?
You know, you are making assumptions in your questions that have not been proven and I don't believe are provable.
Okay, why did you wait 6 months to have this hearing today or have this testimony?
You know, I've answered that. I thought that given the way that other witnesses who were subpoenaed at the same time were being treated, that there was an unfair treatment of both my husband and myself. And I thought that, especially from my perspective, I had very little, if any, information to provide you, and that I could have done it in a sworn statement, and you could have moved on to depose somebody else who might have more information that would be beneficial to your
I have two more questions.
We'll get back to the hot tub a little bit later, but now I want to talk about Howard Lutnik once again. Again, the current United States Secretary of Commerce, who appears numerous times in the Epstein Files. Again, was neighbors with Epstein, communicated with Epstein through emails. There is even a photo that may appear to be him with Epstein. Now, Hillary Clinton is asked about him, and watch what happens.
Did it concern you at all that Ghislaine Maxwell was heavily involved with people you knew and were close to?
I knew people that I knew her. Yes, that's true.
And you just shrugged. You didn't want to look into it or have
nobody,
any question about it?
until her crimes were revealed and she was indicted and tried and convicted, I don't think people knew very much about at all what she was doing.
And then how do you know Howard Lutnik?
Ooh.
I know Howard Lutnik because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnik missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping his child off to kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're going to yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent my...
Oh, shit. All right, get a little spicy. Okay. Yeah, you want me to slander my hubby? Nah. Let's get into it. Okay, Hillary.
Howard Lutnik because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnik missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping his child off to kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're going to yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at
time
me.
doing.
I'm a survivor trying to look out for other survivors trying to
and
protect
I
one
was
another.
taking care
You
of
waited
the
6
people
months
who
to get
lost
here today.
3,000
6 months,
lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me about
I have met
Howard
with
Lutnik.
Epstein survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein that you tried to get Jeffrey Epstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnik was
If
used
you
to
have an
get
email
money,
with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money,
email from Howard Lutnik sending it to
what's
Jeffrey
the question?
Epstein and his people to raise money for
I don't
you
know
for
about-
an event, an intimate event for you at his offices
Well,
at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're
look,
going to sit
if
here
you-
today
if you would let me finish.
obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey
I
Epstein
didn't.
when
I
there was
didn't.
an intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnik emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to put it. You want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
Well,
okay? I am looking out for
it's
survivors.
very-
I'm doing
look.
the job that you would not do and refuse to do as Secretary of State. Thank
Oh,
you, and I yield back.
Hey, by the way, I want to show you the person who is speaking. It's important. Her name is Nancy Mace. You're gonna hear a lot about her because what she's been doing is she's holding belt to ass. She's holding the fire to the people who are mentioned in this Epstein list, and mostly her demeanor is everyone needs to be questioned. We're not going to take anything lightly. And she's the one who we're going to get to. That's our next topic. She has now suggested that Sean Carter, a.k.a. Jay-Z, should be one of the people who's going in front of Capitol Hill. And he needs to answer some questions. Now, some of the hip-hop media guys, they're not going to like this. You know why? That check might get cut if they don't speak out against it. I can't wait till tomorrow in hip-hop media. Just watch. Tomorrow, well, first of all, we're staying up until 5:56. It don't matter. I can't wait till I'm watching everybody give it, wait, who's filming tomorrow? Is Joe Budden podcast tomorrow? I know I gotta look at Joe, I gotta look at Charlemagne, I gotta look at all the other guys in media, like all the top guys, Vlad, Adam, like trust me, and I'm not picking and choosing here. I look at everybody, but I want to hear what they think because what they told us was y'all just hate Hove, and I'm like, the nigga name is in the Epstein Files. It's not like we created the Epstein Files. Well, it's just like a random thing. All right, bet, whatever. Now, a member of Congress is saying, we want to talk to this motherfucker. Also, you know the beautiful thing about this? Is because a lot of people were saying it's the media creating this. When you see somebody that's in Congress doing the inquiry, I wonder what they say now. Anyway, let's go back.
No, I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have a right to do. I am very sympathetic to your personal situation. I have read about it. I have seen you testify or speak on the floor about it. And I very much sympathize with not only what you went through, but appreciate your effort to stand up for survivors. I was a senator representing the people who were murdered on 9/11. Nobody lost more people than Howard Lutnik. You can say whatever you want. You can call him and have him appear before the committee.
So she's kind of defending a guy who people feel like he's a little bit suspect. He's currently serving in Trump's administration, which this is where the interesting thing comes in. Remember, Trump kind of came out randomly and be like, yo, why they fucking with Bill? And people are like, yo, Bill's a Democrat. You're a Republican. Why are you over here trying to get his back? But we're watching now Hillary defend, look, Lutnik. Howard Lutnik, okay? Look, he's an American businessman, government official who serves as the 41st Secretary of Commerce. Okay? Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. He is serving in, I don't know what he is, like, what he personally believes, but he's in the administration for a Republican president. So this is where people are skeptical. They're like, we're starting to think that maybe the creepiness it's not just only the Republicans, it's all of y'all. And y'all just try to protect. This is the only time you see Democrats sticking up for Republicans and Republicans sticking up for Democrats. What did Trump say? Why y'all fucking with Bill? Bill's a Democrat, you're a Republican. Okay. Now we're hearing Hillary, who's a Democrat, saying, yo, this guy, he's the one who lost all the people. Well, he's serving in a Republican administration. Interesting. So now party lines don't matter, but before they'll argue to the T about it. Look, after fundraising, he did fundraise for Hillary in 2016. He fundraised for Trump as well. So he's one of them guys, he's trying to fit in anywhere. But it shows, you know, again, he was playing both sides. Interesting. Okay. But Hillary's defending him while he is currently in the administration reporting to Trump.
But I knew him as the man who lost the employees that he knew intimately, including his brother.
And he was
So I worked.
you and
Let her
Jeffrey
finish
Epstein
her
raising
answer,
money
please.
for you.
Let her finish her answer.
You know what? If you don't want to hear what emotionally affected me, that's fine. But that's why I know Howard Lutnik. I went to the memorial service every 9/11 after the formal service was held.
I see what you're
with
doing here,
all-
and you're
with
obfuscating
all
from
of
the
his
questions.
people,
he was
the
go-between
families.
between you and Jeffrey Epstein raising money for your
Well,
campaign.
you know, Howard Lutnik and I did work
Thank you. I will
together
now yield
because
to
we had a
Congresswoman
lot of
Warner.
victims
Thank you.
to take care of, and we worked together to rebuild downtown Manhattan. That is how I know Howard Lutnik.
Why don't you want to get over here?
Fine, I'll do the heavy lifting.
You get like it later.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, now I want to go back to Lauren Boebert, who had this very interesting back and forth on this one. Now, you remember the 2016 conspiracy theory about Pizzagate? Mentioned this in a prior sidebar about references to pizza in the Epstein Files, people making connections between the two. Pizzagate was the unfounded theory that you had this sex trafficking pedophile ring featuring prominent Democratic figures was being run out of a D.C. pizza shop. Boebert asks Hillary Clinton about this.
In past public statements, as in 2017 speeches and interviews, you described Pizzagate as a baseless conspiracy theory, alleging you and others ran a child sex trafficking ring from a Washington pizzeria basement. Have you reviewed any 2025-2026 Epstein files that were released that you believe reference or relate to those specific 2016 claims regarding the Podesta emails, Comet Ping Pong Pizza used as code possibly?
I'm sorry, does
You're
this
asking
relate?
her about whether
Excuse me.
she's reviewed emails
In the Epstein Files.
which relate to the wacky Pizzagate
You
scandal.
could characterize it however you want. I just would like to know if she's familiar with any of them.
So,
She's
excuse me,
commented-
your question is about whether or not
All right, the lawyers are clarifying they could do that.
she has reviewed any emails in the Epstein release files about Pizzagate.
Correct.
Now, these lawyers are doing their jobs. I'm going to tell you why. Because remember, she's under oath. So if they said, have you ever, do you know about Pizzagate? And she says, no. And it comes out later, she was emailing people about Pizzagate. That's kind of like perjury, right? So what they're trying to do is like, they're trying to like limit the question. Well, so your question is, did she review the Epstein files and then from the Epstein files be familiar with the allegations of what the pizza and you know, they're clarifying it for her. That's obviously going to save her from some legal trouble. So these are W lawyers. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Your question is about whether or not she has reviewed any emails in the Epstein release files about Pizzagate.
Correct.
Pizzagate was totally made up. It was an outrageous allegation that ended up hurting a number of people, that caused a deranged young man to show up with his assault rifle and shoot up a local pizzeria. I can't believe you're even referencing it. You should be
There are connections to the language. I'm
Well,
not
the
talking
QAnon
about-
people believe there are, so
I don't know what QAnon
have at
people
it.
believe.
Have at it.
But you've accused certain parties, and I think even right now today, of promoting slow walking or information in ways that fuels conspiracies. In your view, did any Epstein-Maxwell related investigations or file handling pre or post 2019 contribute to or intersect with the spread of Pizzagate style theories about Democrat figures?
Objection.
I have
Calls
no
for
way
an
of answering. That is the
impossible amount of
most
speculation.
ridiculously.
Have you or your representatives identified any Epstein file content that has been misinterpreted online to revive those claims? And what steps, if any, have you taken to clarify?
Again, object on the ground of
I think that this is all very
speculation.
reasonable.
Well, first of all, I don't follow the crazy conspiracy stories that are online. I regret that anybody does. I find it quite sad, but also disturbing that people would believe some of what is put forth, like Pizzagate. So I have taken no steps to review anything
Do you think
that might have
pizza-
any connection to something which I think is totally bogus.
Next question, want to provide a little context here. So remember Anthony Weiner served in the U.S. House of Representatives, had to resign over claims he sent women sexually suggestive photos.
yeah, I remember him.
Then there was the whole scandal of him texting a teenager. He was convicted of having sent obscene material to a child. He was released after 18 months in prison. Now, he was connected to Hillary Clinton because his then wife, Uma Abedin, had been an aide to Clinton. And during the investigation into Weiner, the FBI found emails belonging to Abedin on Weiner's laptop. And then that led FBI Director James Comey to announce that the FBI was reopening its investigation, its probe into Clinton's handling of official emails, and this was before the 2016 election. Guess what? She was asked about this in the deposition. Not happy.
Are you aware of any files that were on Anthony Weiner's laptop in a folder that was titled insurance, life insurance, with a zip file titled
Excuse me, I
Frazzle?
like the
This
chairman's
is
ruling. No,
way
I like
outside
the
the
chairman's
scope.
ruling.
This is way
within the
outside the
scope?
scope.
Is this within the scope, Mr.
If
Chairman?
the chairman rules that it's not within the scope, I
Mr.
have other
Chairman, based on
questions.
what you said in the public hearing, is this within the scope?
We can go off the record for a moment. to
Mr.
confirm
Chairman, is this within the scope?
We'll go off the record.
One more part I want to address real quickly regarding Hillary Clinton. Things got tense when she brought up Republican lawmakers.
You know, I also find it very interesting because I went back and looked at the transcripts of all of your other depositions, and none of the Republicans asked a single question to any witness about Jeffrey Epstein, or any question that would help provide answers for his victims to any of the people you deposed. In fact, the only questions that were asked by the chairman to Attorney General Barr. And what were they about? They weren't about Jeffrey Epstein. They weren't about Ghislaine Maxwell. They weren't about victims and survivors. They were, General Barr, I may jump in for a couple of questions. Were you aware of the involvement of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign in the Russian collusion investigation involving President Trump?
A deposition of Ms. Clinton.
Well, I'm just saying, you have kept me here for hours asking the same questions over and over again. I've given the same answers over and over
Secretary,
again.
we
Not
will-
a single
If
Republican
you give us
at
just a
any
moment.
of your depositions has asked a question about Epstein or Maxwell. And it does seem to me that if the members were truly interested in getting to the truth,
Madam Secretary,
you would have
I
asked
think you have an
Barr,
We are very
Acosta,
close to
Wexner, you
finishing.
didn't even show up
Madam
at.
Secretary, I believe